Hello again, Guardians. It's Cortanium, and today we are talking about sword stats. Specifically, these are like the little circle things you see on the sword that you can always switch around, and it's between like Relentless Strikes and Assassin's Blade, and a bunch of other perks that you were like, what do these even mean? What do they actually do? Of course, the game offers like a one-sentence summary of what you think it does, but sometimes that summary is often misleading, or it doesn't actually do what it says it's going to do. And so today I have all the statistics to back up, what everything actually does. I have all the claims here, and so you can see the actual perks and what they actually do. And so this is going to be a very, very good video. Fantastic if you love swords and you just want to see what your sword perks are actually up to. And so let's get started. The first perk, or not really perk, but statistic I want to talk about that's often faked on swords is the sword impact cap. And so what determines the sword damage is the impact stat. That little bar, the rectangle bar that fills up, and it's usually high or low. And as a note on visual response in game, you'll actually hit a cap as far as the UI tells you. If you're swapping perks around on them and you see no increase, the sword will do more damage, but it's visually capped at 95 impact. And so this means if you swap out like Assassin's Blade for Tireless Blade, and the description of that perk says increases damage, but the UI doesn't update, that's because the game's lying to you. Because the UI doesn't allow the damage on the sword to appear that it's past 95, but in reality the damage actually is going to appear past it. And you'll see this a bunch in Destiny and in other games where they'll show you one thing but it means another. It's really common, and so you guys better get used to it. This little thing at the bottom here, all it's telling us is that you can use the sword, if you don't know this, but if you ever want to do this, as a melee weapon for any elemental kills. Imagine you need solar elemental kills, and you also need void elemental kills at the same time. Just put on a sword and you can use them for melee kills, even if the sword doesn't even have any ammo in it, which is very cool. That's a useful tip you can use if you're using a sword. Let's move on to our first perk, the Assassin's Blade perk. Right, what it tells you at the top is that sword kills boost movement speed and damage, and this is very true about this. But how much does it improve our movement? How much does it improve our damage? And so killing an enemy grants you an additional 15% damage for the next 5 seconds, and movement speed is increased, but it's a bit hard to determine the exact value. I'm assuming movement is increased by about 1.2. You're only running, a little bit faster. You're not running twice as fast. You're not running, half as fast. You're running a little bit faster. That's the thing. And so it's not actually, that fast, but as you can see, the 15%, that is our exact number here. And these numbers are a little bit hard to come by. Destiny subreddit, Raid Secrets, actually had to pull together all their knowledge and actually just make up a bunch of numbers that they got from shooting a bunch of stuff and taking out their swords and meleeing stuff and see what happens. And so these are the stats they got. The next stat we have is counterattack. Guarding while receiving damage grants a damage buff that lasts for 5 seconds. That's what they tell you, at least. And what it actually does is it grants a blanket 50% damage increase to all outgoing damage for 5 seconds. Virtually any damage that isn't physics-based triggers effects on the sword. And so what that means is if any enemy shoots you and you're guarding with this perk active, it actually will make you a 50% damage increase on everything you have. Every ability, every super you pull after that, it will increase it by 50%. And so all the outgoing damage, you could switch back to your hand cannon, you could switch back to your shotgun and hit someone for 50% more. By physics based, what they mean is that you can't take fall damage while guarding with your sword and then expect for the perk to trigger. It won't. It needs to be an enemy projectile or someone firing something at you. That's how you get the perk to prop, and you can use it. And I feel like this is going to be a very useful perk. Moving on, we have the On Guard. Quick attacks immediately after swapping to the sword do additional damage. What this actually means is that it increases your sword's damage by 1.5 times for the next 2 seconds after taking it out. The time it takes to prep this is almost negligible, at 1 second needed from stowing to gain the effect. The perk typically lasts long enough for you to get 2 light attacks in, so imagine you pull out your Quick Fang or whatever sword you have, and as long as you swap to it right away, you can get 2 attacks in super duper fast and at a 1.5 times multiplier, and then you can put it away. And so this might be really cool for shredding a boss. Imagine you really need that 1.5 times and you have that super good sword. I don't know, and you take out that sword, you switch to it, and you hit the boss twice, and then you switch to your gun again, and then you swap to that sword again, and you keep reusing this perk over and over again. I'm not really sure how useful it is at this point, but it sounds pretty useful given what it actually does, and so it might become your new favorite perk if you guys try that out and figure out, if you like it or not. Next we have energy transfer. Guarding while receiving damage generates class ability energy. And so you see this big paragraph right there. I'm not going to bother reading it, but basically what it's saying is that it doesn't matter how much damage you hit a friend for or how much damage you get hit for. It's still going to return basically the same amount of super energy, the same amount of ability, melee, grenade energy that it would have done otherwise. And so this perk, it's actually very good. 75% of your stuff is returned if you get hurt a lot. I mean, that seems pretty good to me. If I get hurt a lot in Crucible, bet I'll use this perk. Next we have the Shattering Blade perk. Now what this perk does is if your heavy perk attack consumes the last of your ammo, pretend you're on one sword swipe left and you take that one sword swipe, or you're on like 6 sword swipes and you do a heavy sword swipe, it deals significantly increased damage, but this excludes aerial attacks, and so unfortunately it will not work if you try to do it in the air. But if you're on the ground, you are going to be doing a 3 times damage to any enemy you hit with that final sword swipe. This is not the best perk, I'll tell you that, unless you're like getting heavy ammo and running out of it like super quick. This perk is only gonna prop on like the last of your ammo reserves every single time, and so unless you're that guy that just never has sword ammo and you always just don't have sword ammo, I guess this is gonna be good for you. Otherwise, it's a 3 times damage perk on the last sword ammo of your magazine. If you really like it, I mean, you roll with it, that's just you, buddy. But for all the rest of us normal people, if you have 50 sword swipes and the last sword swipe does 3 times damage, it's really not worth it to have that perk on there when you have tons of other great perks that will prop more than once every magazine. It's just insane. I don't know why Bungie added this perk in. It seems like one of the more useless perks. I could get the perk if it was like maybe 15 times damage, but it's only 3 times damage, and so I'm not really sure why anyone would have this perk when we have tons of other perks that do twice as much damage and 1.5 times as much damage, and so on. Next we have the Tireless Blade. Sword ammo granted for every other powered sword kill. And so this means that every other sword kill you have that you actually have ammo in your sword for, it's going to give you sword ammo. Of course, this will make your 50 magazine sword only lasted 75. It's not going to make it last twice as long, but 1.5 times. As you see, Bungie seems to love that number, 1.5. And so for every other 2 kills you get while your sword has ammo in it, great for ad clear. Can be done with both heavy and light attacks, though light attacks are best used to conserve ammo. And the Whirlwind Blade. Consecutive rapid sword strikes increase this weapon's damage output, or at least that's what they tell you. What it actually does is it increases the damage by 6% per stack, and then it stacks up to 5. And so it gives you a total of 30% increased damage if you do consecutive rapid sword strikes. And so if you do 4-5 sword strikes on a boss, it's going to start giving you 30% boost on every single sword strike after that. And so if you have a lot of ammo in your sword, quick, go for it. This is actually a pretty good perk. If you don't have a lot of ammo in your sword, I don't know about this, because you're going to need a lot of ammo. This, as it compares to other perks, I'm not really sure how this compares, but it could be cool. You guys will definitely just have to try it out on your own. I will not recommend it, because I don't really use swords on boss. If you're a smart man, you know that swords are definitely not the best way to take down the bosses. Anyway, for the last one we have Surrounded. This weapon gains bonus damage when 3 or more enemies are in close proximity, and so this is a perk that goes for swords and shotguns and every single gun, not just for swords. But as you see at the bottom here, swords get a 25% increase of bonus damage when 3 or more enemies are around here. And so this could actually be very good. Imagine you are surrounded by, I don't know, servitors. There you go, something really powerful that has a shield. You get 25% damage when 4 servitors are around you. Provided you don't die instantly by all these bad guys around you, you will be dishing out all the damage in the world against these guys. And that's going to be very good for you and very good for your sword-loving self. And so, that is it. Thank you guys for watching. I'm sorry I did not... I was actually planning to do this video in a bunch of other videos, there's actually 80 perks in the game for all the guns, and I really wanted to show you guys, what each perk actually does. And unfortunately, if you take 80 perks and I even spend 15 to 30 seconds on each, it's easily going to be like 30-minute, 15-minute videos, and I don't really want to do that to you guys. And so I'm going to be breaking a bunch of the perks down if and when I can into little videos like this where I take down the sword perks, and maybe I'll make one where I take down the shotgun perks, and so you guys can learn what these perks actually do, and if you actually want to use any of these perks on your own. Thank you guys for watching. I'll see you guys in the next one, and go use your swords, Guardians. Have fun.